Ta-da-da, da-na-na-da-na, da-na-na-na-na-na-da-na, da-da-da-da-da-da. Recognize the tune? It's an oldie but goodie. In case you didn't, that was the opening theme song to the show I Love Lucy that aired in the 1950s, starring Lucille Ball. Did any of you people know this? Okay, we'll work on that. Well, if you don't know who Lucille Ball is, you should definitely come, first of all, to my home or to my office, because I have countless memorabilia that represents her unforgettable talent. But when I was in 4th grade, my mom insisted that I watched this show called I Love Lucy. Of course, I immediately said no way, because it was in black and white, and of course I was too cool. But she pleaded with me for days, and I finally gave in, and I watched an episode with my mom. And from that moment on, I was hooked for life. Lucille Ball, along with my mother, of course, became my hero. Aside from stating the obvious, that Lucy was funny and charming and clever, she was a groundbreaking human being. And in the 1950s, getting recognition for being a groundbreaking human being and for being a woman was very rare. Not because women weren't brilliant in the 1950s, but because many women's initiatives and dreams were squashed at the time, simply because they were women. But Lucille Ball never took no for an answer. She was sharp and used her wit to break all sorts of boundaries that we probably take for granted today. So what did she actually do? Well, Lucille Ball grew up in a poor home and always loved comedy, even when she was a little girl. And as a teenager, she participated in choirs and dances and theater, but she was told she was too wild and needed to be more serious, even by her immediate family members, the very people that were supposed to support her. She didn't make it into theater initially, so rather than giving up, she took a detour and decided to pierce the market by becoming a model first. She had to be patient before she could share all of her talent, because the world wasn't ready for a woman to be so silly and audacious on television. It's not like today, where we see a plethora of funny women on television and on our bimas, and probably don't think too much of it. Lucy partook in a myriad of television shows and movies, and only hit her big break when she was 40 years old. That's not old, just to be clear, but it was an age where not a lot of women at the time were just really launching their careers. I Love Lucy, the show that made her most famous, first debuted in 1951, where Lucy had a starring role as a crafty housewife that got herself into ridiculous situations in each episode. On camera, Lucy's slapstick humor pierced every funny bone in her vast audience's body. Off camera, she was a revolutionary genius that progressed the world, yes, the world, forward. She was the one who brought her co-star, Cuban-American bandleader husband, onto the show because she wanted to feature an interracial couple on television. Very uncommon at the time. She was the first woman to own and run a production company that would later be recognized for becoming the first show to have multiple cameras on set in front of a live studio audience. They brought reruns to show business, and perhaps her most radical accomplishment was that she was the first woman to be pregnant on television. Lucille Ball was one of those people who set a foundation for women's advancement, progression in television and film, and so much more. So what inspired her to do all of this? Well, if you ask me, it was bravery. I'd like for us to take a moment and think about that. What is the bravest thing you've done recently or in the year past? You know it was something brave because you had to probably push through uncomfortable feelings of anxiety or take a chance and do something outside of your comfort zone. What did that act of courage look like for you? What did it feel like? What emotions did you experience? Were you successful in the end? Does that matter? I bet one emotion you felt was fear. As human beings, we all feel fear. Fear is a natural response to uncertainty or the unknown. And today I'd like to suggest that fear is really useless unless it encourages action. And to get to action, you need that middle step, and that middle step is bravery. I know what you're all thinking, or I think I do. That's easier said than done. Or maybe you're thinking, I don't really have time for bravery. Well, bravery is really important. And I'm talking to you about bravery today, not because I've mastered it by any means, but I do believe it's what we need in order to build a stronger future generation. As many of you know, 3 months ago, I was blessed to become a mom for a second time to a little girl, Ariella. And in starting to raise her, I'm noticing that society views her a little bit differently than they do Micha, my 2-year-old son, as early as birth. I sometimes feel like my kids are automatically put into categories that separate my kids, and I'm not always comfortable with it when it comes to bravery. There should be no separation. I model and encourage bravery in the exact same way for my children, my students, and members of my community, despite gender, age, or any self-identification. Bravery should be a universal value that we embolden in those around us because it helps build confidence. It allows people to take risks. And the best part is, when we teach people around us to be brave, we're saying that even if they make a mistake when they're taking a chance, which of course they will, we will be there for them on the other side. So in essence, when we teach bravery, we're also teaching unconditional love. Bravery is a willingness to want to act despite fear. It means taking a chance even when you're scared and don't know the outcome. And to clarify, bravery doesn't mean wrestling a lion to the ground, although it could. Bravery could be about showing vulnerability. Take, for example, Simone Biles. 24-year-old Simone Biles turned herself from a groundbreaking Olympic medalist, national hero, and sports icon into all of that and a champion for resilience, self-care, and an adult who models how to take responsibility for her actions. By backing out of the Olympics this year, she modeled what it looks like to uplift others, celebrating in her teammates' accomplishments and championing their victories as part of being an Olympic medalist. It's not just about getting the gold medal. Her teammates' wins are her wins, and her win is theirs. We don't typically reward this kind of behavior. Biles should be celebrated for taking the perhaps less popular but sensible decision rather than burning herself out. She listened to her instinct, faced the backlash she knew would come, and made the right choice for herself and her team. She didn't hide or cower and owned her decision. Bravery looks different for each person, regardless of self-identification. It's about breaking personal and sometimes communal boundaries that may seem insignificant to others, but are huge for that individual. As supporters of bravery, whether you're a parent, a child, a friend, a sibling, a colleague, we must encourage those around us to take the risks they need in order to grow and cultivate the best whole-rounded versions of themselves. Rosh Hashanah is our time for renewal. It is our time to really stop and evaluate what we've done and perhaps more importantly, what we haven't done, and reflect on how we foster new beginnings. Looking almost 70 years back, it's easy to see how brilliant Lucille Ball was and how her courage led to such remarkable advancements that progressed her own life and influenced the world. But you don't have to become famous in order to make big differences. Bravery is a value that promotes problem solving, thinking outside the box, and creativity. It allows an individual to uncover and discover new abilities they never knew they had and really embrace themselves. When we see someone trying to exude bravery, lift them up. Don't put them down just because it doesn't fit in that comfortable category that we're so used to seeing or experiencing. I chose to share these words with you today as an intergenerational audience because I really want every child, teenager, and adult to know that it's never too early and never too late to model and be courageous. And whether you succeed in your immediate goal doesn't matter, because you'll be stronger and flourish just from partaking in the process. Bravery doesn't happen in one swoop. It takes many baby steps. And as a community, let us all agree to help build one another up, create safe places for all of us to be brave through creative and enriching opportunities. Let us have the courage to make ourselves and our world a braver place. I wish you all a sweet new year filled with love and peace and joy and bravery. Shana Tova.